Good morning and welcome to this Sunday service of the Eno River Unitarian Universalist Fellowship here in Durham, North Carolina, on the unceded lands of the Eno, Shakari, Saponi, and Lumbee people. I'm Reverend Jacqueline Brett, and whoever you are, wherever you come from, whatever your race, your gender, whomever you love, we welcome you into this space this morning, as well as those of you who are at home and watching us there. We invite at this time for anyone who might be visiting with us online to place your names in the chat box. And if you're visiting with us in this space, we would so love it if you would rise in body or spirit so that we might give you an ERUUF welcome in both spaces. It's so good to see all of you. Thank you for choosing to spend your Sunday morning with us here. If you're visiting, and I don't know how many people have children with them or not, we want to let you know that we have an amazing religious education program that takes place every Sunday morning at 9:30 a.m., right next door in the Commons room and outside. I think most of it's going on outside right now. But we invite you to bring your children, I think it's K through fifth grade children to that program. They had a sock hop this morning, and I was sitting in my office, and it sounded like I was at a disco. It was really quite amazing. We also want to let you know that we have a class called Inquirers for Visitors and Newcomers that takes place at 9:30 a.m. as well. And that's so that you can get to learn a little bit about who we are and spend some time with the ministers and our leaders and get to know more about us as you let us know more about you. So we invite you to attend that as well. And for the month of December, that class is taking place right across the breezeway in the fellowship hall, and it's also multi-platform. So for those of you who are visiting with us online, you too can participate in this class, and information on how to do so can be found in the events section of our website. So please, we would love it if you would avail yourself of that. And if anyone happens to have children with them, or you see someone with children with them, I just want to let you all know that our chapel is now designated as a space for families with very young children, and so we would like to reserve that space for them, and so they're welcome to make use of it. I have a couple of brief announcements, and one is that now that we are back on campus, it is possible to reserve space for your meetings if you want to meet here live and in person, and also as multi-platform. And in order to facilitate that, the divine, fabulous Sean Trimble is conducting a multi-platform meeting room orientation this coming Tuesday from 1 to 4 p.m. The orientations are taking place every 30 minutes. So you can just drop in. She said that walk-ins are welcome so that you can learn how to work the equipment and how to do a good multi-platform meeting if you want to do that. So if you want to contact Sean, you can find out how to do so right on our website. I think it's Trimble, S as in San Trimble, at ERUUF.org. Or you can simply write to office@ERUUF.org, and she will get that message. I have a couple of notes for those of us who are in this space right now. The first is that it's a good idea to put your devices on vibrate or worship mode right now. However, we want you to keep them handy because we'd love for you to use them during the offertory to give online. But do place them in worship mode. So I also want to make note, some of you might notice a smell that is pervading the space. And, as I said last week, that is just our brand new HVAC system. We've had contractors come out and other people come out and literally take apart the system, put it back together to make sure we don't have a problem, and we are assured that we don't have a problem. There are no leaks or anything. We just have to wait until this is the process of this new system, I guess, settling in. So, but we will be keeping our eyes on it. We also ask that for everybody in this space to please keep your masks on throughout the service and above your nose. We here on the chancel floor will be out masks. We are socially distanced. We have a HEPA filter up here. We're distanced from you. We're distanced from each other. And so, but we are asking that everyone keep your masks on, especially when singing. And we also want you to make note of the blue marks on the pews, that they're there so that you can be socially distanced. And I just want to just say that if you notice someone wandering around, trying to find a place to sit, and you're sitting on the end of an aisle, we just invite you to move to the next blue spot or stand up so that they can get into the pew and are able to sit. But that's what blue marks on the pews are for, so that you can be socially distanced. And I want to also let you know that you may have noticed we have no bulletins anymore, and that's because of our fabulous new AV system, and so everything is going to appear on the screen that you'll need for this service. And if you're interested in finding out what's going on here at ERUUF, and we always have a lot going on, go to eNews or subscribe to eNews. We really want you to do that because the bulletin was nothing but a repeat of eNews anyway. So go on to eNews and you'll be able to find all the information you need about what's going on in our community. So that was a lot. This morning's worship service is led by the Reverend Deborah Kerr, myself, and the Reverend Stacy Grove. And so let us now come into the space and center ourselves. And for those of you in other places, we invite you to center yourself in your spaces as well. And let's all together take a collective deep breath in and let it out. And let us begin our service this morning.
You know, you could hear all those notes, but from where I was sitting, I could also see them on the page. You know how some writers get paid by the column inch? I think they, you know, if musicians would be wise to charge by the note for that piece.
And he also rocked it out. I say that as a former bassoon player myself. He rocked it out. And so did the clarinetist. I played the clarinet too.
What's delightful too is to watch musicians dance with their instruments. What a treat this morning. Thank you guys so much. I just want to take this time also to welcome, a very special welcome to our friends from the Unitarian Universalist Church in Richmond, Virginia. We have been attending each other's services once a month this fall in October and November, and we're welcoming Richmond here to this service this morning, and we're just so delighted to have this exchange. It's been a really rich experience, and so we're going to them now, and they'll also be back with us for Kwanzaa, because Kwanzaa is such a special service. We don't want them to miss it. Anyway, today we are coming toward the end of Hanukkah, and so our opening words this morning are from the wisdom of the Jewish sages. These are from the work of Rami Shapiro. He says, "We are here to do,
and through doing to learn, and through learning to know,
and through knowing to experience wonder,
and through wonder to attain wisdom, and through wisdom to find simplicity,
and through simplicity to give attention,
and through attention to see what needs to be done,
and understanding this, to be the ones who do it."
Blessed is the match consumed in kindling this flame. Blessed is the flame that burns in the heart's secret places. May the flame that shines in these short winter days remind us of sunlight. May it remind us of our inner light, which always shines, no matter the length of days.
So last night was the 7th night of Hanukkah, and tonight is the 8th night, the last night. And here's a poem, just a gorgeous poem by Brad Aaron Maudlin that I just found this week. It's called "One Candle Now, Then 7 More." Maudlin writes, I grew up in a family that did not tell the story. I am listening to it now. Even the morning you see a robin flattened on the street, you hear another in the tree. The notes they've taught each other, bird before we were born. And elsewhere, the rusty bicycle carries the doctor all the way across the island. He arrives in time. Somewhere, his sister adds water to the soup until payday. And over the final hill in a southwestern desert, a gas station appears. No, the grief has not forgotten my name. But this morning, I tied my shoelaces. Outside, I can force a wave at every face who might need it. We might spin till we collapse, but we still have a hub. Even at dusk, the sun isn't going anywhere. We have lamps. The story insists it just looks like there's only enough oil to last one night. We light Hanukkah candles this morning in honor of our Jewish roots. Hanukkah means dedication, and it commemorates the rededication of the Jerusalem temple in 165 BCE, when the Maccabees took back their territory from Syrian conquerors. There's so many meanings to this day, but that's kind of the roots of the history. As I said, Hanukkah began last Sunday evening, and we're coming this evening, to the end of this year's celebration of wonder and rededication. So Reverend Stacy is going to light candles and sing the blessing for us this morning. Good morning.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu b'mitzvot tov, v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Hanukkah. Praised are you, our God, creator of the universe, who makes us holy through your commandments and commands us to kindle the Hanukkah lights.
Brave little candles. You can do it. We're going to sing this morning. Claudia Kaplan is going to lead us in Light One Candle. The words will appear on your screen.
Peacemaker's time is at hand. Don't let the light go out. It's lasted for so many years. Don't let the light go out. Let it shine through our love and our tears. Light one candle for the strength that we need to never become our own foe. Light one candle for those who are suffering the pain we learned so long ago. Light one candle for all we believe in, that just anger will tear us apart. And light one candle to bring us together with peace as the song in our heart. Don't let the light go out. It's lasted for so many years. Don't let the light go out. Let it shine through our love and our tears. What is it so highly, we keep it alive in that flame. What's the commitment to those who have died when we cry out they've not died in vain? Have we come this far to always believing that justice won't somehow prevail? This is the burden, and this is the promise, and this is why we will not fail. Don't let the light go out, it's lasted for so many years. Don't let the light go out, let it shine through our love and our tears.
Good morning. My name is Vincent Licenziato, and I'm here today to talk about the 2,500 hours of love and my volunteer service at Stagville. And if you're not familiar, historic Stagville was one of the largest plantations in North Carolina. And similar to Monticello Plantation in Virginia and the Whitney Plantation in Louisiana, Stagville is leading the way in which the true history of enslavement is taught in America. And I just want to take a moment to read from the brochure. Stagville is one of the few plantation sites in the United States that focuses on the lives, culture, and labors of enslaved African Americans. Amid the horrors of slavery, they continually resisted, claiming some measure of freedom through sabotage, direct action, cultural traditions, and freedom seeking. So a little bit about me in Stagville. I actually found out about Stagville when I moved to Durham back in 2017, and so I was actually volunteering at Stagville way before I even became a member of ERUUF. And I worked on projects similar to what I did in Boston. I helped with the brochure, actually, that I just read from. I helped edit this. I work on the 4th of July special event where they read Frederick Douglass's July 5th speech, What is the Negro to You? Because he was asked to speak about the 4th of July in the 1850s when many millions of people were still enslaved. And I also help with speaking engagements because I can speak in front of people. So when I told folks what I was doing here in Durham, it was just a continuation of my work in Boston. And one of my friends mentioned that I found my people, and I really have. I really love going to Stagville. And I am an educator, so just a little bit of education. The words we use are very important. For example, the word enslaved is now used in terms of instead of slave because it shows what was being done to people, not the condition that they existed in. And that's the only thing we know about them. Similarly, the words master and owner are also not used. And I bring this up because I was familiar with the word enslaved, but I wasn't familiar with the word, what substituted for master and owner. And I actually brought that up, that I was uncomfortable with those two words. And so while we were working on the brochure, I mentioned it, and I was told, well, we use enslaver, which is, again, a much more descriptive word of what was happening. And we don't use those, to me, very offensive words regarding how one human relates to another. But it was really hard for me to do that, so I had to go beyond my comfort zone. And that's why I bring it up, because I think the volunteer work we do sometimes lands us in uncomfortable situations. But these are situations where we learn. These are situations where we get a better understanding of what's going on in the world. And this really leads to a more beloved community, which we all are working towards. So the important work that we do through the 25 hours of love, it can be uncomfortable at times, but that's okay. That's where we're meant to stretch. And as I mentioned, I've been doing work at Stagville way before I came to ERUUF, and it was easy for me to go and volunteer there. The one thing that's not easy is to me to track the hours, because I wasn't used to that. You know, tracking hours at Stagville is the last thing on my to-do list. And to be honest, I'll say it in front of all of you, I need to go home and do it this afternoon because I haven't done it yet. Now, but I keep in mind the satisfaction I receive from the hours I spend there. And the importance of showing what we do at ERUUF goes beyond our walls. And it's very nice to have the walls back again here, so it's great. This is my first time back. So it becomes less of a chore, but less of a chore. So I'm very grateful for the opportunity to be volunteering there, and I hope many of you have signed up for the 2,500 hours of love. And if you have any questions about Stagville, please ask, because I love the place, it's doing great work, and I encourage you to either go there or work on some other project beyond ERUUF. Thank you.
Thank you, Vincent, and thank you to all of you who are participating in the 2,500 Hours of Love program. It is a fantastic project that we have set ourselves about, so thank you all. I have our reading this morning, and it's from Kant's Critique of Pure Reason by Tim Settle. So that's a shift, right? And so Settle says Immanuel Kant is one of the titans of philosophy. He noticed that there were certain rational problems that reason itself could never solve. If you are arguing over the existence, non-existence of God, that the universe didn't have a beginning, that there isn't a pure substance or truly necessary being, the argument always ends in a deadlock. Each side can prove their case rationally. Kant called these deadlocks the antinomies of reason. His conclusion was that these antinomies revealed a limitation within reason itself. Kant was not a foe of reason. Kant was actually using reason to show that human reason is fundamentally flawed, or at least incomplete. That is one of Kant's critiques of pure reason. G.W.F. Hegel, also a philosophical titan, came along and argued that Kant's observation was correct, but that he drew the wrong conclusions. Hegel said that when human reason ends in contradiction or deadlock, antinomies, this doesn't mean one has failed to gain insight into reality, but that one has succeeded. When human reason exposes a contradiction, reason is merely doing its job, revealing the rupture or contradiction or antagonism that lives at the heart of everything. Contradictions reveal something, the nature of being itself, ontology. Reality itself is dialectical, beset with these intractable or unsolvable contradictions. Of course, you know this to be true because you live this reality every single day. It's why you never feel totally at one with yourself, why you are always filled with desire and unrest, why you can love yourself and hate yourself at the same time. It's why you feel like you are honest and constantly tell little white lies. It's why the Apostle Paul said, I always seem to do what I don't want to do and don't do what I actually want to do. Everything that exists is not at one with itself. Everything is disturbed on some level. Everything is contradictory and struggling with internal ruptures and antagonisms. That's life. That's reality. Reason has the ability to expose and probe the antagonisms and contradictions that lie at the heart of everything. Not to solve them, but to tell the truth about them and hold space for these tensions because they are what give rise to a new possibility. Dialectical philosophies and theologies urge us to explore contradictions and exacerbate them without trying to solve them. Because it is only by holding contradictory ideas in tension over time that something truly new can emerge. On the other hand, if we attempt to solve the contradiction by privileging one side or the other, then we fundamentally distort reality because contradiction is part of the way things exist and effectively close off possibilities for a better future. The words of Tim Suttle. Our next hymn is Wake Now My Senses. We invite you to rise in body or spirit. Claudia will lead us and the words will appear on our screen.
It's number 298 if you have hymnals there.
Favorite hymns of all times. Wake Now My Senses. So, Omicron. This new variant just seemed to pop up into the news out of nowhere. It was sudden, and because I don't know Greek, the name was really strange to me. Omicron, like it might be the name of a children's toy, like a transformer, maybe one of Maximus Prime's cousins or something. Omicron. I can tell how much something bothers me by the amount of time I spend trying to clobber it with humor. This news actually hit me pretty hard. How about you? Omicron. What are we in for now? I was moaning and groaning about this in the office with Jenny last week. Omicron, and she was right there with me. I'ma cry. Can't. First we cracked up, and then we did almost cry. Because who knew this was going to last for 2 years? Maybe scientists who study pandemics, but not the rest of us. And now I am having quite a lot of feelings about this. And so are a lot of you, I know. We are so very done with this pandemic, right? And it is not done with us. That's the problem. And so it's important to pay attention to our feelings, I think, because they provide a lot of really important information, which is mainly about us and how we're experiencing things, which is what then enables us to take care of ourselves and each other. So I think it's important that we pay attention to our feelings. And yet, I don't think they're enough. Our feelings are not entirely reliable for collecting the kind of accurate information that we actually do need in order to get through this pandemic safely. So to accomplish that, we have to use our ability to reason. It's not that reason has all the answers all by itself alone. It's just that it gathers information from wider sources than what's just in our own individual hearts and minds. Wake now, my reason, reach out to the new. Join with each pilgrim who quests for the true. Unitarian Universalists highly value our ability to reason, and this goes back to philosophers who influenced our spiritual ancestors during the European Enlightenment period. Immanuel Kant was one of the people who was looking for ways to understand how we could know, understand, and trust new scientific information at that time that was pouring into European society. Kant highly valued human reason and believed that humans could trust their ability to make new discoveries because the information comes directly out of our experience of the world. It's our observation, our interaction, our experience. And that, in fact, we are able to comprehend the world because the universe has a structure that is both out there and it's also in here. This means that human beings are not only able to look around at the world and see what's out there, but we can bring our own thinking to bear on it and make something more, something new, and something good out of it. In order to do this, however, we require the freedom to think and to act. In fact, Kant said, our freedom is essential in order for humans to behave in fully moral ways. As Tim Suttle pointed out in this morning's reading, Kant also noticed that there are rational problems that reason can't even begin to solve, right? There are ends. The reason does come to an end. If you're arguing over the existence, non-existence of God, or that the universe did or didn't have a beginning, the argument always ends in a deadlock because you can logically go down one side of an argument and make a very logical, tight argument and arrive at very different conclusions, those antinomies. So he called, he believed that, that's just what happened. But this wasn't the end of the story for Kant, because he believed that when we come to the end of reason, we do have the ability to take responsibility for ourselves and make moral choices, and that this is the area that we are able to be active participants in our own faith. Faith is something active. It's not passive. And he was one of the first people of his time to claim this. And in him, we find some important attributes of religious liberal thinking. It was some of the first. And this is important because it's among the first philosophical moves away from a purely mechanistic understanding of the universe. Human beings don't just have to figure out the rules of the universe and then toe a predetermined line in order to get into heaven, for instance. Humans actually have a lot more capability and a lot more possibility and can be active moral agents. Wow, that just opened up like a whole new realm of human endeavor. So one important thing to note is that all of this was taking place within a worldview where people were looking for the correct answer, the one right way for everyone to be and to think and to do. And it's amazing, it's a temptation for me to go, yeah, they got it so wrong. But then I look around and I think, that's still a temptation for us today. I know it is for me, especially when we're stressed out about big change, like the pandemic and climate change and dismantling white supremacy and threats to democracy and big advances in technology that are just leaving us spinning all the time. Sometimes we really do want the certainty of a correct answer. It's a comfort in that. It's like, there are the limits. We know where the edges are. We're not going to fall off. And sometimes there is a right answer. Just do or stop doing X, Y, or Z. That's simple. But so often there's more than one possible way to understand a situation. And it's important that we acknowledge other possibilities, multiple possibilities. And so for us, unlike Kant, paradox, that might be our word for antinomies, paradox isn't so much of a problem to be solved as a situation to be managed, or us to manage ourselves within that paradoxical situation. Nearly 250 years ago, it was a huge thing for Kant to even notice, just to notice, that it's possible for good thinkers to logically arrive at completely different views, and that when they do, they're not necessarily bad, or wrong, or morally flawed, or doomed. For Kant, this was a great exercise of human freedom in the interest of morality and faith. Kant left it there, but others who came along later took this farther, and we can too. And so we're going to come back to this a little bit later in the service. But now, Reverend Jacqueline has our prayer for us.
I invite you to join with me now in the spirit of prayer. Spirit of love, Spirit of life, eternal presence that moves through each of us, complete the work that has begun in us. Release through us a flow of mercy and gentleness that will bring water where there is desert, healing where there is hurt, peace where there is violence, beauty where there is ugliness, justice where there is brokenness, beginnings where there are dead ends. Awaken in us gratitude for our lives, love for every living thing, joy in what is holy, and praise for that which is truth and eternal. May our faith be renewed in the spirit of love, spirit of life, eternal presence that moves through each of us, beyond our grasp, but within our reach, past our knowing, but within our searching. Disturber of the assured, assurer of the disturbed. Destroyer of illusions, creator of dreams, source of silence and music, union and solitude, light and darkness, death and life. May we be granted joy in our blood, prayer in our hearts, trust at our core, and love and life and songs for our journey. And we lift up the prayers of all who are celebrating joys and milestones, life challenges and loss of loved ones in this community and beyond. We hold them in our hearts for a moment of silence. May divine creative love and peace be ours. Amen, Ashe, and blessed be.
So the story continues. George Wilhelm Friedrich Hegel came along after Kant, and as Tim Suttle writes, Hegel said that when human reason ends in contradiction or deadlock, those antinomies, this doesn't mean that we've failed to gain insight into reality, but rather that we've actually succeeded. We're seeing what's actually there. Because there are contradictions at the heart of everything. Reality, he said, it points to the fact that reality is dialectical. It's full of these intractable or unsolvable contradictions. So Kant so today, we might just talk about paradox and the paradoxical nature of reality. But Suttle points out that if we follow Hegel's thinking, what we come to is that the difference between good and evil isn't this good person or this good group right here and those evil people, that evil group over there. We don't have that either or kind of an understanding of even something so important. What we find is that there's a line between good and evil, as Alexander Solzhenitsyn said, that runs through the center of every human heart. That capability is right within each of us. Or maybe it's like when Ibram X. Kendi points out that we always have a choice to be either racist or to behave in anti-racist ways. Because racism is an action, he says. It's a behavior. And we always have a choice about how we're going to act. And we can always make the choice to become more conscious and more aware and more skillful. And we can make the choice to stop being so afraid of being punished for stepping out of the cultural roles, the cultural boxes that we've been taught by our culture, sometimes in very subtle ways. Just the fear that we have of stepping out of any box that we might be in, that we might be oppressing ourselves by being in that box, but we're afraid. Or so afraid of being called a racist if we're a white person from the dominant culture, that we will twist into all kinds of weird justifications for our racist behavior, when instead we could just make the choice to just act and in different ways and then actually be anti-racist. We have a choice, we just do. So these are some examples of dialectic reason and action. And choice, you can hear that choice is the critical operative here. What are you going to choose to do? How are you going to be in relationship? This is not about finding a bright line between good and evil and staying in the pure light or on the bright side of the street. That is a good thing to do, but that's not really the point. This is not about purely either or kinds of thinking. This territory is very much, yes, that's true, and at the same time, something else is also true. This is what we mean when we talk about being in both and kind of awareness, in allowing for the possibilities of both and. And it's what it means to enter into dialectical thinking and dialogical listening and speaking. Dialect and dialogue, they're related.
What Hegel and others have said is that when we find ourselves in this kind of a situation where there seem to be big, insolvable differences, before we decide to do anything, first, we actually need to lean into those tensions and shore them up, make those tensions stronger. Because what those tensions actually do, they're like tent poles. They're like stretching open a space. Stretching open a space. It sounds simple, but it can feel truly terrifying when you're doing this. Ask anyone who's stepping out of a box for a first time or a closet. But what we gradually come to understand is that our thinking is what created the box, and the box is just made out of thinking, and it's not doing anything so good for us. It's there actually probably to benefit someone else. Who would that be? It's a good question to ask. The educator Parker Palmer teaches people how to stay curious in this space, in this effort of leaning into tensions. He says that we can do that by learning to ask non-judgmental, open, honest questions. And this is what we practice in our covenant groups together, and in our chalice circles, and in so much of our anti-racism work. Because this is what teachers of dialogue know, that when we lean into these kind of tensions without trying to destroy them or somehow resolve them, this place of tension and impossible differences is actually the aperture. It creates this opening, this aperture, out of which new ideas and new possibilities emerge. New ways of being human, new ways of being in community together. That's where the birthplace of that is. It's the place of emergence. It's the place where something that's entirely new, you couldn't have thought of it because it did not exist. It's where it comes into the world. And because of all of this, this is sacred ground. This is holy territory. Take off your shoes. Because this can be the place of revelation of new truth, new understanding. And we start by just opening our minds, opening our hearts, and showing up to hold that space open. Which sounds simple, but it can be very challenging if you are anxious or if you are afraid. Even if you're just surprised because what is happening breaks all the rules that you've been taught, that you've been proud to practice as a good person. It's hard when that coming apart process happens. And yet, when someone tells us that what we're doing is hurting them, get our knee off their neck, or get out of their uterus, we need to stop. We don't need to be offended that they're not telling us so nicely that they can't breathe. We don't need to be offended because they're unladylike out in the street, arguing for their human rights and their civil rights. We just need to practice unlearning what we've been taught so that we can make better, more inclusive moral choices. And we can build up new moral and spiritual muscles. This is why we practice together in here in our groups, so that out there we have the strength to do good things in the world for more people, to be more inclusive. We're living in a time of tremendous change, and it's natural, it's so natural that most of us are afraid of losing something precious. What's not necessary, however, is that some very powerful people have started using some pretty intense tactics to try and get their own way. And if you just look at members of Congress or some members of the Supreme Court, you can see some of their reasoning is very twisty, and then they tie it all together with a perfectly morally superior kind of a little bow. It's one thing when people really truly believe what they're saying and they're making honest arguments to advocate for their position. It's especially okay when what they're aiming for is for the common good. Being provocative for the common good, okay. But it's another thing entirely when powerful people use fear tactics to get what they want for their own benefit, even to the point of lying and inciting fear to get it. That's wrong. Either or thinking sets up a situation in which there are winners and losers, and sometimes, like now, the stakes are very high. They're even life or death for some people, and that is terrifying. But no matter what, we have to, as best we can, keep breathing and be very clear and very vocal when we need someone to get off our neck or out of where they do not belong in other areas of our life. We have to lean into our power at the same time to make choices that are inclusive. It can help to make jokes that expose our worst fears so we can see them for what they are. Emperors without clothes, naked in the street, foolish, not because of their nakedness, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with nakedness, it's fine. But foolish because of their hubris, their willingness to put on outfits that are made up of lies, to parade around in lies. That's ridiculous. And we're not going to have it. We can't afford to have that. It's foolish because they have no ability to withstand the discomfort of conflicting multiple truths. How immature to not be able to tolerate that someone has a different idea or understanding. One part of our Unitarian Universalist faith has always been about cultivating the moral power of covenant, the bonds of love and respect that hold that sacred space open. The work of covenant is the responsibility of each and every one of us. We keep our covenant with our non-judgmental open questions and honest listening. When we do this, when we manage to practice this together, what we find is that our fear begins to loosen its grip, and we find better, more inclusive, more life-giving ways to protect ourselves and the ones we love. This is nothing new. Kant and Hegel did not actually invent this. This is just reality, and every so often it comes up in different times and places. In the 13th century, the mystic Rumi wrote, "Out beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right-doing, there is a field. I'll meet you there." I'll meet you there. When the soul lies down in that grass, the world is too full to talk about. Ideas, language, even the phrase each other doesn't make any sense. Something else, something fuller, something better is in that field. It's a dialectical space, that field. And that's sacred space. You add in the story of the enslaved people, and that's why Stagville feels like sacred ground to so many of us. It's not just a special place, it's a sacred space because of the lives and the stories of the people who were there. When we add that in, we find that sacred space at the end of our ability to reason all on our own. I only know my story. I don't know your story. I need you to bring your story and tell your story and add your story. We need a new story, a story of we that's bigger. We need that not just to survive, we need it to survive, but we need it to thrive. We need it to co-create a future together. So it's good, it is so good to be open and attentive in that space so that we don't miss out on something so much greater than anything we were ever told about, anything that we could have ever imagined. The holy, the sacred, it's too good. Don't miss it. Stay awake. We are Unitarian Universalists at our best. At our best. We are the people who understand that love is more than a feeling. Love is our ethical choices in action. At our best, we hang in there together and forthrightly share our truth with others, and we stick around and we listen to what they have to say. And together we lean into our differences and our questions so that we keep that space open. We live in the tension so that we can keep that space open, not for what we want, not for what I want, not for what one person wants, but for what wants to happen next. Something more that's bigger than any one of us. we keep that space open so that love can come into the world in new ways. That's the good news for this morning. That's part of the good news. The story continues in us, in our actions, and in our life. Blessed be. So we come here every week to add our part to that story, that good story, and to help create a new story together. We do that with our time, and we do that with our talent, and sometimes we do that with our treasure. At this time, if you're in Richmond, you can find the mechanism for giving to your own wonderful congregation. If you're in Durham, you can find a link in the chat box, or if you have a device, you can also find a link in it to our secure portal, if that's something you would like to do this morning. This is a time during the Offertory when we can contemplate some of the big desires that we have for a better world. Thanks for all the gifts that support and enhance the work, the ministry, the shared ministry of this beloved community. Matt and Nick chose that music because it was written by Tausch at the time that Kant and Hegel were doing their work. So all of a piece. Thank you. Thank you. Our final hymn this morning is in our Earth and Spirit songbook. The words will be on the screen. It's "For This We Stand." And I just want to say, I've just spent the morning talking about inclusiveness. And earlier this fall, I had a problem with my back and I couldn't stand. And so all of a sudden I got it. Oh my gosh, that's really like, I'm not included in that. And I got it, why language matters so much. And I'm also just aware of all these thoughts going through my mind about how words matter and invitations matter and how we want to be inclusive. And at the other hand, words are just metaphors. So there's this tension even in this, just in our language and how we use language to express our thoughts. This is a gorgeous hymn that really just carries so much of our principles and our value. I don't know what we do with the metaphor of "For This We Stand," but I invite you to rise, embody your spirit as you are able, and sing together through the tension of some of these beautiful, wondrous things that make our world possible.
And it's page 46 if you want to look at the notes. For this we stand, all peoples of the earth, in spirit as in law across the sacred land, a worth and dignity bestowed to each as right of birth, our lives in interdependence. For this we stand. For this we stand, one human family, evolving tapestry spun over single strand of earth and water, born this harvest of diversity, one flame of life bright within us. For this we stand. For this we stand, mysterious unity, integrity as from the single artist's hand, our humble step informed by wisdom of the centuries, our every breath gift of spirit. For this we stand.
For this we are. Oh. Tangled up in our lives and our face masks. Our closing words are by Kathleen McTeague. She says, "May the light around us guide our footsteps and hold us fast to the best and the most righteous that we seek. May the darkness around us nurture our dreams and give us rest so that we may give ourselves to the work of our world. Let us seek to remember the wholeness of our lives, the weaving of light and shadow in this great and astonishing dance in which we moved. Go in peace, friends, go in love. Bring some of what you've experienced and felt to the world. It's waiting and it needs us. Amen."